Mixing with my plugin of the week comes from Oeksound. It is Spiff. This has been around for a little bit, so I'm just catching up on this, just like I did with Soothe. But it's equally as cool, and there's a reason why it's the plugin of the week. So let's dive in. This is a plugin that was originally designed for specifically getting rid of mouth noises, which is kind of an interesting thing. I don't think there are really any other tools for something like that, and specifically, and it evolved into something much more. Essentially, what you have is a dynamic processor that will either cut or attenuate signals. And what you have here is essentially what amounts to a sidechain filter that determines the sensitivity within different frequency ranges. So when you select cut or boost, you get the two different colors to show you what's going on, which mode you're in. And whether you work mono or stereo, it'll give you some different options. But let's go over just the basic display here, basic settings here, and we'll dive into some audio examples. So start off with what you have here, whether you're cutting or attenuating, you have a depth control. So this will determine how much processing gets thrown on there. You also see there's a tooltip here, which I can disable the tooltips here so we don't have to look at it. The depth will give you how much, whether you're boosting or attenuating. So you'll see there on a scale from 0 to 10, and you have it there. Sensitivity. Now, the sensitivity will be, the number of transients. The higher you have it up, the more transients are going to be detected. The lower, the less transients will be detected. So this is somewhat of a kind of threshold kind of like feature, although that's not exactly what it is. The decay is the release time or recovery time, much like a compressor, because it's either compressing or expanding upwardly. And when it's expanding upwardly, then, how fast it recovers will be dependent upon the type of material. So if it's more transient in nature, you may want to do it a little faster. If you're looking to boost more RMS kind of energy, you might want to set it to decay a little bit slower. The sharpness controls the Q, right, or how narrow of an area it will affect when it applies the processing. And then there's an interesting feature here, because if you have typically with any percussive instrument like a kick drum or a snare drum, you'll have primarily two areas. You'll have an RMS energy, which will be the fundamental frequency or somewhere around there of the kick drum or snare drum. And then you'll have the attack frequency, the actual stick hitting the head or the pedal hitting the head. And what you have there are two different frequency ranges. And what you could do is you could set a balance there between the decay time of lower frequencies versus higher frequencies, whether you set the decay time to be slower for lower frequencies, which is typical, or slower for higher frequencies, which is atypical, but may find its place into different situations. Now, when you work down here, you have the mix control. Mix control will, it'll always start off at 100% wet, so you could pull it back there to do a wet-dry mix kind of thing. The trim will actually only trim the processed signal. Okay, which is something to understand. If you're adjusting the mix balance, then the trim will kind of affect that. The delta is a very cool feature because that allows you to listen to only what's being done to the audio, right? So this will solo up essentially the boosts or attenuations that are occurring and leave the original signal on alone. So that's kind of a very interesting feature. Got a hard bypass that's right here. That's pretty straightforward. Now, when you're working in stereo mode, it could be left, right, or mid-side. And then you have a stereo link. This is sometimes cool, and I'm going to show an example of this, where if you have something in stereo and the timing of the parts on either side may be not linked together, they may be offsetting and stuff like that, you can turn off the stereo link, which would allow the left and the right to operate independently. Or if you're in MS mode, allow mid to operate separately from side. And this can actually work out quite cool in terms of balancing how you apply it, right? That could be work, especially in like a mastering kind of situation. If you're working in MS or stereo, you also have a balance control. So in this case, you could control what percentage you have that works towards the mid or works towards the side. So it's most often the case that you get a lot more energy or a bigger amount of energy most of the time, in most mixes, in the center signal. Usually have kick drums and bass and vocals and things like that. On the side signal is usually less dominant energy, but at least it gives you a percentage control so you could sort of weight it one way or another. So all these features will work whether you're boosting or attenuating, or if you're on the mono version, then you won't see those features. You will see this window, which opens up in both. Obviously, I have a stereo instantiation here. You have the resolution. Now, the resolution is essentially how often it updates the profiling information, right? What's being fed into it, right? So the more you do this, the higher resolution and the hotter it is on the CPU. You have oversampling built in there for better accuracy. You have a window. This is kind of an interesting thing, and this actually plays really well in an important feature to think of when you're dialing in a sound, because sometimes you think like you have things dialed in and it doesn't quite sound right. You pop over here, set the window to short, and all of a sudden it works perfectly, or you set it to long, and all of a sudden it works perfectly. Medium is the default value, but if you're working with more transient energy, then the short is typically a bit better. So just about the processing window, the size of the processing window. So it's better for transients. And if you have it larger or on the long window, then you're more for a wider frequency range instruments. Like if you have a piano, like a big grand piano, where you're dealing with a broader range of frequencies, whereas a snare drum, it'll kind of have an attack within a tighter frequency range, and so it'll give you that capability. Very cool. And then you have the phase mode, which could be linear or minimum phase. Again, these are all CPU decisions that you can kind of work with to kind of dial things in that way. Now, the frequency display window here gives you 5 bands. You have 2 filters, a high cut and a low cut filter, and then 3 bands that you can kind of work with and set the type of filter: tilt EQ, low shelf, high shelf, or peaking EQ. Whatever filter you select, you have a Q control for each of the bands, and then you can sort of adjust this, making it more sensitive, so it will process more within this frequency area, or if you pull it away, less. And part of having the high pass, low pass filter is a way of just saying, hey, I don't want it to respond to low frequencies at all. So in other words, if you're just trying to eliminate mouth clicks from a vocal, you don't want it responding to the RMS energy at all. So that's a great way of doing that. And on the other end, you have the exact opposite, where you could sweep. You can also grab multiple bands and do all of those sorts of things. I only grabbed 2 by accident there, and move them around together if that's helpful to kind of dial some sounds in. You have an independent sensitivity control, right? So that just is basically doing what I was doing there. Set the frequency so you could drag things around, and there are a few shortcuts that allow you to kind of dial some things in. One really cool feature that's worth checking out is the band listen feature. So when you focus in, this may allow you to really dial in to a particular range if you hear a noise or a particular frequency, and then pop out. And there, I think it's the Alt key or Option key, which will allow you to do it. And then as soon as you take the click off, it'll kind of go back to normal. Other than that, you have a preset browser, AB, all of that sort of stuff. You have some options here that can, either give you a narrower range here on the side, or a wider one, depending upon how aggressive the processing might be. So maybe if you're doing something that's more mastering grade, you might be on the precise. It comes to the default, which is the medium, -15 to +12, right? And then you can kind of go for more extreme processing. All kinds of stuff that links you to the website, what plugin version, et cetera, and the manual. All right. Let's dig right into it. Get to some audio examples. What I had set up here was a series of tracks. One thing that I was getting with this, and in really trying to work with this, I was trying to find some kind of use cases that were somewhat practical in the mix, just to kind of see what things would kind of come up. One of these things is I was getting this clicking noise that was happening in this bass part. Right, and you could hear it on just like certain notes. It almost sounds like it's kind of clipped, and that sort of bothered me a little bit. So I brought something in here. So I'm making the sensitivity. I kind of dialed it in here. I guess I ended up like around 3K, but just to kind of dial in the frequency area where that click was occurring, and then just to kind of dip it out. So it doesn't eliminate it, but maybe it just softens it a little bit. right? So I think if I make this decay too short, it kind of leaves on the back end of that clickiness. But and I could probably back off on the sensitivity a little bit. And just because I'm dealing with a transient, this might be a place where I want to kind of get like more of a short window in there. Just to kind of soften it a little bit, take the edge off of it, without doing it with an EQ necessarily. So if I now mix that in with the drums, so what I was hearing there with this was that it was kind of flamming a little bit with the kick drum, and so it's a very subtle thing. So maybe not the best example for this, but something that I had considered. And one other thing that I had tried to do with this, which didn't really work, is I set up an A/B kind of thing. But I just wanted to show you because this is another way of managing. Well, not this particular problem, but if I go over here, I was trying to do something here, which might be a use case for working with this on a bass part, where you sort of push up low frequency. So the other was in an attenuation or a cut setting. This is in a boost setting. So boosting low frequency, and then boosting high frequency, and then having it, drop back down. Although this was exaggerating the effect, the part that I didn't like. And then I can lean the decay longer towards the low frequency. Make it kind of pump a little bit more, make it tighter. Right, so that's kind of like a way of making that low frequency energy kind of pump and breathe. When I did this, I kind of liked this version better. You may, think it different, but, I thought it was kind of a cool way of working. The similar kind of idea of just like working with the kick drum here. So if I solo up the kick drum and the snare drum, I tried this similar kind of approach here, where what I was doing was just kind of tightening the cue in on the fundamental, really carving out the low mid frequencies just to make sure that wasn't going to be an issue, and then boosting an attack frequency. right? Just to kind of as a way to kind of add like a little bit of more of an aggressive vibe to it, a little bit more of a punchy kind of vibe. And I used a shorter window on this as a way to just kind of keep it pretty tight, pull the decay down a little bit. Not really looking for a lot of sustain here, not looking for a lot of things. Just kind of, it's really just kind of pushing sub frequencies and the attack. And I was also attenuating, the output level to sort of balance it a little bit. But just as a way to kind of make it aggressively kind of pump. So it's somewhat like a transient shaping kind of tool, but obviously much more targeted with, way more controls. So let's hear that with the bass, see if this is all working together here. Right, so you could hear, how that, really, brings in, the punchiness of the, out of the drums, which is very cool. Of course, most people like that. Let's go to one other thing here, which was the guitars. Here I have all these funk guitars that are kind of got loads of wah parts all over them, right? So it's wah pedals and the actual tracks. I'm sort of putting it on the stem here because I have essentially what's like 4 or 5 tracks of guitars with these sort of backbeat hits and then all of these sort of funk parts with the wah. And I have them kind of more or less divided up left and right, which is that one part like right in the beginning section of the song. But the idea here was this is a case where I want to take away the stereo link so that if I'm going to attenuate, kind of cut a little bit of the edge of that wah, because sometimes when those wah pedals just sort of open up, it, can really, with the resonance built into the filter, it can kind of really sweep up and kind of be a little bit hurtful. So I wanted to kind of cut the edge on that a little bit. So I pulled the filter down here so it's not the high pass filter, so it's not dealing with any of those lower frequencies in terms of the attenuation, just kind of attenuating on the top end. So let's just check that out. And here I have like more sharpness. I really wanted to get, a lot of stuff. I could probably pull back on the sensitivity here. Let's check that out. Right, just to kind of pull that in, so it's like a little bit more musical, kind of cuts a little bit of the edge, and then let's hear that. If we take that and kind of add that in with the track here, of course I increase the size of the display here somewhat big. Let's hear. Right, you can hear how it just like softens it, kind of makes it a little bit easier to hear, really draws you into the individual notes a bit better, like brilliant. And then one last thing here that I use for the vocal, and this is sort of a throwback here to the original design, I guess. and I actually called up a preset that was remove mouth clicks, and I wanted to see, well, how good is it at that? I don't know. Let's check it out. So here, oops, wrong vocal track. Let's go back to the verse here.
Me get up and me fresh up and say yes, Lord. Me dress up with the best up on me left yard. A straight positivity me manifest and me know upon my blessings. John and go press pass. Go down a head tracks, that's the best part. Cliff, line up a rhythm, me have a tune for bless hearts. Tell them how me feeling and what we dealing with. Revelation, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine.
All right, I think I'm going to go here with the hook section here, because this is, I think, and it's not overly exaggerated, but it's just notice an A-B here for in and out.
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now go make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibes. Me have to keep me energy high, for real. Me no biggie, me no ready fi die. But if I sound just say, then me ready fi fly. Me like a bird in the morning, me take to the sky and spread me wings like a eagle.
The delta there is all the mouth noise stuff.
Feeling good, I'm feeling fine.
I just lowered the sensitivity. I think it was probably drawing a little bit too much and decreased the decay. Also used a short window there just to kind of drive that a little bit.
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now go make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibes.
Right. And then, so that's just to kind of, bring that in. Let me just see if I have this on for the rest. So, yes, I do. It's on for the other tracks. Yes. Okay. All right. So this would be it. Let's just hear this vocal in the track itself.
I'm feeling good.
I think it works by me taking the solo button out. Here we go.
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now go make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibe. Me have to keep me energy high, for real. Me no biggie, me no ready fi die. But if I sound just say, then me ready fi fly. Like a bird in the morning, me take to the sky and spread me wings like an eagle. I soar high over people. Play this in your vehicle, your headphones or your Bluetooth speaker. This a the stress reliever. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now go make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine.
So it's kind of a cool thing of just like softening some of that stuff up. It's it's a very, very, very cool plugin. As you can see, flexible, has a lot of use cases. You can see just with a wide variety of instruments here, guitars, vocal. It's just like some simple uses, bringing out some note in the bass, kind of removing some clicks from the bass. Seems like I'm kind of working a little bit more on that end and kind of focusing some things out, but quite cool. Very, very, very cool plugin, very flexible, loads of controls. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to kind of work with some of these window settings and stuff like that to kind of really dial in the work that it does. And of course, obviously the depth control, you could dial it in to be a little bit, less aggressive if you want to kind of soften it up a little bit. But a very, 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 very cool plugin. I dig this one a lot. Great addition to my collection, and I've been using it a lot, so I really love it. There you have it. That's the plugin of the week, Oeksound Spiff. And maybe on the Spiff 2, when that comes out, probably tomorrow after I release this video, they'll have attenuation on some bands and boosting on the others, maybe? I don't know, maybe a suggestion. All right, there you have it. Plugin of the week, Oeksound Spiff.